To congratulate Pisco for making Andrew look like a child. Wait, what happened? Oh, hippy dippy. Nice.
Nicky Jam, Latin music superstar, Nicky Jam. Do you know Nicky? She's hot. Where is Nicky? Where is Nicky? Thank you, Nicky. Great
Nicky Jam is a
having
man.
you here. Now you have to get. Oh, look. Come here. I'm glad he came up. Latin music superstar, Nicky Jam. Do you know Nicky? She's hot. Where is Nicky?
Oh no.
Start voice call, or should I do it in the voice channel?
In ways highly manipulative, and
What is
it
this
all
guy?
boils down to things like this, that you're willing to participate like in Twitch and not, talk normally. Like, to me, right, the question I'm asking right around this is, how do you even have like an honest conversation? How do you pretend to be like this honest person? Like, so I don't know much about you, just what I've seen on Twitter, basically. So I will say, so I am Destiny's pretty evident hater.
Sure.
I've been watching him for like a decade plus. Realized he was a scumbag, let's say like 5 years ago in 2019. So I know a lot about him. I don't hate him. That's not the right emotion, but he's a horrible person, right? And that's just what I've discovered. So what I know about you is that you're basically his servant, right?
I don't feel that way.
You're one of his tenants, right?
I don't feel that way.
Well, okay, great. But the point is right, that's just how I know you. That's my perspective on you is based around your ties to Destiny.
He is my servant. Absolutely. He serves at the will, whims, and pleasure of the DGG empire.
Then when I see on my Twitter For You page, right? So I don't know too much about you, but even with the little stuff I do know about you, it's concerning, right? What are the things, like when I was thinking about why do I have a problem with you, let's say, why am I willing to make fun of you on Twitter? Because it's not just some bullshit. Like, it is funny and I'm having fun with it, but I'm insulting you purposely because I think you're bad. I think you engage in pretty horrible stuff. One of those things, right, that I remembered is that when Erudite, not so Erudite, was basically exposed as basically trying to be a fraud, right? I think it was psychometrist, was that the title she was
I remember that.
Used, but technically she couldn't use it. You were willing to go on her defense hard. I forget the guy,
Sunday, yeah.
Harvard, Sunday. That the really ugly, horrible guy too. But the thing was, like, he did this honest expose, and you pretend it was honest, even though it's like, oh well, you didn't give the full context, right, and stuff like that.
Can we talk about this? I think this is an interesting thing to bring up. Can we talk about this specifically? Yeah. So the reason why I defended Erudite there is because I thought Erudite was right, and I just want to give you a little bit of paint you a little picture. When I initially saw Sunday's video, I kind of really wasn't thinking about it that hard, and I was like, to my own Discord, I was like, hey, isn't this crazy? Erudite's not who she claims to be, or there's something wrong here. And there was someone in my Discord who said, what are you talking about? And it doesn't seem like there's anything wrong at all. And I listened to the video again with a new frame and a new understanding, willing to like question my own beliefs. And what I found, and what remains my position today, is that it is Sunday who was being defamatory. It was Sunday who was getting things incorrect, and it's not Erudite who is a fraud, in my opinion, based on my review of the evidence. That's my honest opinion. I wouldn't defend her if I didn't believe her.
Yeah. Right, so you're saying that basically that kind of the Sunday guy baited whoever he asked, right? The email he got, he baited them into basically answering in a way that wasn't really descriptive of the entire context.
It's one thing,
That's what you're saying.
That's one thing, yeah.
But that's not really the case, right? Because him taking away the context that he was in the stupid internet drama battle actually provided the whoever, I think was some lady, right?
This line on the monitor is just oh, it fixed it. Oh, thank God. Okay, does anyone know how to get rid of this line on the monitor? It's just oh, it fixed it. Oh, thank God. Okay, does anyone know how to get rid of
that responded with that email provided her the ability to actually have a clear-cut opinion of
that's not what I think is missing context. It's a good point to bring up. I didn't fault him for saying, hey, this is part of an internet beef. I don't think that's something that, first I think the suspect in going after that specific professor, but because it's a specific program, maybe you think that was okay to do, and maybe you think it was okay to do under false pretenses, which it was under false pretenses, but you can just put that aside for a second. Put that aside. What he omitted wasn't the fact that this is part of a Twitter beef. What he omitted was, can someone with your degree, someone who gets your degree, are they a psychometrist or a psychometrician? And the answer was not just by virtue of doing that degree. No, you should look to see other kind of qualification programs, other things, and other kind of this degree by
crazy, horrible shit, personal shit, and of course, like, and I could give.
Timmy, what is this all about? What is this all about?
I guess about politics. Well, it's about basically what I've seen on you on Twitter, which is you being disingenuous.
Well, okay, I'll admit there are a couple times where I'm disingenuous. Can I be honest with you? So this is when I'm disingenuous. Sometimes I'll reply to like MAGA conservatives and be like, oh no, JD Vance is our candidate. What are we gonna do? I think that is trolling. It's a little trolly. Okay, but that's just me being honest.
Wait, is my... Hold on.
Trolly. Okay, but that's just me being honest.
Wait, is my...
Well, it's about basically what I've seen on you on Twitter, which is you being disingenuous.
Well, okay, I'll admit there are a couple times where I'm disingenuous. Can I be honest with you? So this is when I'm disingenuous. Sometimes I'll reply to like MAGA conservatives and be like, oh no, JD Vance is our candidate. Sometimes I'm disingenuous. Can I be honest with you? So this is when I'm disingenuous. Sometimes I'll reply to like MAGA conservatives and be like,
okay.
You can just click on my profile. It says Kamala for president, and so that is the extent of my trolly behavior. But I don't think that I'm ever disingenuous about my real opinions. And but when I stand for something, I will fight.
Well, sure you are. So on the bait thing, right? So the debate, right? The term bait, not the debate, even though it was about the debate, right? That's not even your thing, right? You just you spam that idea. Oh, that Kamala is baiting Trump, right? Because it was a narrative, right? That was.
I can see it. We all can see it.
Pushed. Sure, right? Sure, that's great. But it's not your thing, right? And you pushed it, and it didn't matter whether it was real or not. It was just about the.
No, I was seeing it in real time, and it was a mistake from Trump. And even Trump's allies acknowledged it.
Right? That is essentially right. The DNC, not the actual DNC, but the umbrella of Democrats, right? Establishment Democrats. That was the narrative they went push. Right?
I was reacting in real time, though, Tim. I wasn't getting my marching orders from the DNC.
You were.
How? I was seeing him take the bait.
Right.
Because
Sure, right.
Kamala Harris
But
has
that's
this,
the
has this
thing,
kind of like
so-
mediocre. Wait, I just want to give you what you want. We can talk about. I think it really brings out some color. So thank you for sharing that.
Well, yeah. So, and I do AI stuff. So, statistics, data science, AI, machine learning, right? It's all heavily related.
That's really topical these days, right? I mean, I feel like everyone's trying to start a new. If I'm being honest with you, I oftentimes like to get input from people I disagree with or who disagree with me, and to see what it is that I'm doing that's upsetting them.
The
Either,
funny thing is, if that was true, you would be listening to me because, I might be shaky at this, right? Stream and all this shit. I've never done this before. I've never had I don't fucking debate, but I do have. There are nuggets of wisdom in what I'm saying. And if you were a real dude, you wouldn't just shove this aside. You would actually think about what I'm saying. Because again, yeah, I'm not actually being crazy, and you can pretend I am, but our conversation was pretty clear. I was following along good enough. I was responding directly, all these things. I was doing it at a high level that, any fucking conversation you have with fucking, the people you fucking debate with. You know what I mean? So like, and you can pretend there's nothing here and that I'm just some crazy loon. But the truth is that, again, there is something to what I'm saying. And it would actually do you good to think about what I'm saying. Because again, I'm not insulting you out of nowhere. You're doing some pretty nasty shit. And again, right, it represents what's wrong with the world. As I said before, it's what's wrong with our culture, what's wrong with our political system. And you can throw that aside if you want. But this is the thing, like, all the other shit is empty. Like, you can lie to yourself all you want. You can lie to your audience all you want. You can be as just genuine things as you want. You can, get viewers and, get influence that way. But it's all empty calories. It's all vanity. It's all vapid bullshit. It's all just greed. And the thing about greed is you can just acquire as much money as you want. It will never be enough. So yeah, you should think about these things.
I will think on it for
Think
sure.
about who you associate with. Think about what you do, what you defend, and all sorts of things. And try to be a better person. If you're a real person,
As people.
Who? What?
basically just what kind of is prescribed to you in a certain way. Again, I should.
You think someone was telling me to say
about
that? You think the DNC?
No, not directly, right? But that was what was in errors. Oh, we're gonna, Trump's taking the debate, right? And you jumped on the bandwagon essentially.
I think that
I'm trying to say.
I promise you, I was just tweeting. I wasn't looking at like other people's tweets about the same thing. I was.
Well, that's the thing. Like, that's fine. You can say that all you want, but the example you provided, like, if we're being like clear about it, it's not really like a bait response. Sure, it wasn't the best response. That's what you're saying. Oh, he could have a better response, sure, but that doesn't mean it has anything to do with bait, and it really doesn't. And that's the gap that I'm talking about. Is like, why would you refer to that as bait, and why would you refer to all these other things as bait when really there's a million different better ways to describe them than bait? So yeah, that's part of it, right? It's just right. You're wrapped up in your political team, and so you kind of hop on these bandwagons, and instead of being genuine and actually have a clear-cut reaction to what you're,
Okay.
The most exciting thing about life? It's how you can change it. How you can reinvent yourself. You can move to new cities, try on new styles, meet new people, take on new challenges. So go ahead, reimagine yourself. We did. Introducing the all-new, reimagined Nissan Kicks.
Means most of those people would be ineligible to vote. That means when you're considering voting, knowing this, you and all the people that are eligible to vote are actually losing jobs. Fourth, jobs are hardly important if real wages are going down, which real wages have been going down precipitously under the Harris-Biden administration. Now, to talk about some of the other things that were said here specifically, when it comes to sort of housing, let me ask you this question, Pisco. The same people that promised they were going to buy millions and millions or thousands of electrical vehicle stations and were spending hundreds of thousands of millions of dollars doing that, how many did they end up building?
I'm not sure about that. I don't know how to.
Okay, another question. They also said, three, right? Okay, and they also spent.
Who's the same people? What do you mean by the same people?
The Harris-Biden administration and the people that are actually running the show. Secondly, let me ask you another question. When those same people also promised that they were going to spend hundreds of millions of dollars for rural broadband, how many rural broadband people have been connected under that policy that spent hundreds of millions of dollars?
I don't know offhand. I don't know.
The answer is zero. The answer is zero to that. So what Andrew?
A lot of appropriations. Are you denying the appropriations were put towards public ends under the Bipartisan Infrastructure Act, or that there were great investments made under the Inflation Reduction Act?
I think that's deflecting what the central question here. The point that Andrew's trying to get to is it's easy to promise, we're going to spend money that we're just going to create out of thin air to build a product that will benefit people. But the problem is that ends up causing inflation, which we can see is already the core problem of the Harris-Biden administration. And second, they rarely
brings down housing prices. Rob, remember that?
I was bringing down housing prices, causing inflation.
I'd like to continue my point. And secondly, they rarely deliver on the promises that they've given anyway. So we end up with massive inflation and the promises that they delivered not coming through. Now, to the more central point, again, you can see from the.
Hold on. Aren't these two positions inherently contradictory? Or I haven't listened to the whole argument. Is he arguing that they promised to spend a bunch of money, but they never actually spent it, but they're also still causing inflation at the same time? Wouldn't they have had to have spent the money to cause the inflation? Like, wouldn't the extra currency have to be circulating to cause the inflation in the first place? Or there might have been like a broader argument here that I'm not, because I didn't listen.
Opening statements from people like IRI that were shouting racism, talking about the cat story and things like that. Then you see from Pisco talking about threat to democracy January 6th, exactly as I said would happen in my opening statement. They know that despite the gaslighting that they've done, including decrying people that correctly called out the cognitive decline of Joe Biden, the American people do not believe the Harris-Biden administration when it comes to the important things such as the economy, such as immigration. And so they know that they have to deflect from talking about those things at any means possible. I'm sorry, the American people are not assuaged of their fears that Kamala's been there for 3.5 years and their real wages have gone down and they can't afford food and they can't afford housing and their border is porous and their cities are being overrun with people that are breaking the law and taking their resources. And this administration has done nothing but exacerbate that. But it's all solved because she had 20 seconds of policy positions when she said, we're going to give people free money and create houses.
We do need to get other people. Rob, we've done a lot of stuff.
This is a shell game. This is a shell game what they're doing. So Andrew asked for
after Pisco, I do want to go with IRA because he hasn't really said much.
Andrew asked for a specific policy. That's why we're focusing on it.
Pisco, be respectful. Let IRA talk. Come on, what's wrong
I
with
said
you?
after
Pisco, Andrew.
So Andrew asked for a specific policy prescription that we can talk about, and I offered one, and we were focusing on housing because that's where Andrew was taking the conversation. He wanted to get into the substance of the topics, and now Rob is decrying us and calling foul because we're focusing on that instead of Biden's cognitive decline. And
Yeah, that
similarly,
literally never happened.
you cannot win. Andrew is decrying the fact that we're lowering housing prices, and Rob's talking about inflation and worried about prices going up.
Both are true at the same time. So in areas where the low-income people come in, it's going to lower the value of the houses around, and it's also going to cause inflation.
What I'm going to say. So I'm going to finish what I'm going to say. So it sounds like these are a couple no-win scenarios. On the one hand, we want to talk about policy because that's what Andrew wanted us to get into. But obviously, Rob wants to talk about underlying deceit, and you can't trust administration. So pick what you want to talk about, and we can go.
We can talk about all of it, Pisco. It's not a one or the other. It's not a bifurcation. We can talk about all of it. All of it's a package deal. So if you have low-income people coming into the suburban neighborhoods, it's going to necessarily lower the housing prices, which are in that area. Guarantee it happens nonstop. Okay, that is where you get the phenomenon called white flight. That's why that happens. Also, on top of that, it is going to.
The problem is I know for a fact that Andrew doesn't have any economic foundation. So when Andrew is giving you an economic take, it's not because he's read something and incorporated that into his economic view of the world. He's just repeating something that he read somewhere, which isn't necessarily bad. But obviously, when it comes to economics, I would heavily second guess everything he says, not just because he doesn't have a fundamental understanding and is repeating other things, but I also know that he's like politically crazy, so he could be reading wild shit as well. I don't know if Rob has any economic understanding at all. I haven't heard him say anything. Ever since Andrew told me that removing all women from the workforce would just double the wages of all men because you would just be doubling or you'd be reducing the workforce, basically you'd be cutting it in half. Therefore, the wages would necessarily double. Like, as soon as he said that, I could instantly eject every single economic take that Andrew has ever, like, there's, if you're willing to give that take and then defend it ironically, I know that you have absolutely no idea about anything relating to economics. The thing is, I'll hedge more carefully, but I shouldn't because I know these guys, they know less than I do. Did you ever rebuttal to that argument in the moment? Yeah, my understanding of white flight, there are different types of white flight that you can talk about. In the past, white flight would very specifically refer to white people didn't want to live in areas with black people. It had nothing to do with property values. It had nothing to do with like black people being bad in neighborhoods. They just didn't want to live with black people. There used to be this tactic that Jewish real estate people would engage in called blockbusting, where what you would do is you would try to find one block and you'd go to all these white people and you'd start making crazy offers just to get one white family to move out. And if you could find one white family to move out and you do this crazy offer, you'd move one black family in, all the rest of the white people would start offering to sell their homes because they didn't want to live near the N-words. They didn't want to be there. And you would get this thing called blockbusting, and it would cause some degree of white flight. I've also heard, not gerrymandering. Gentrification is referred to as like white flight as well, where you just have areas. No, that wouldn't be white flight. I feel like I've heard white flight in association with gentrification. Gentrification is usually white people going to an area. So I don't know what he's referring to there when he says white flight. If he just thinks that just black people moving someplace necessarily just reduces property values and that's why the white people leave. The problem is, I don't want to say Andrew's a racist. I don't know if I've heard him give takes that are just blatantly racist. I know he's weird, but gentrification is technically the opposite. It's white people coming in or wealthy people, affluent people who tend to be white, but
which are in that area. Guarantee it happens nonstop. Okay, that is where you get the phenomenon called white flight. That's why that happens. Also, on top of that, it is going to increase inflation when you artificially increase the supply by 3 million homes. Pisco, both are true at the same time, Pisco.
When you're talking about economics, I think that you have to be, I don't even know if I use these terms anymore. You got to be really careful when you talk about artificially increase or decrease. Like when we say artificially increase or decrease, what do we mean by that? Like if you artificially increase the supply or artificially decrease the supply or artificially increase the demand or artificially decrease the demand, I think in specific cases you can talk about that. Like setting like price caps or price floors can cause external impacts in the market because you're just capping something artificially with some kind of like actual government policy. But you just need to be really careful when you say like artificial. Yeah, the whole economy is made up. That's reductive, but like if you provide incentives for builders to build in a certain city, like let's say you say, oh, if you build here, like would you consider this artificial increase in supply? Like let's say that you say, oh, we'll give $10,000 worth of tax deductions for companies that want to build somewhere. Is that an artificial increase in supply? I mean, like kind of, but I mean the supply is actually increasing. People will come in and buy. There's going to be other external effects, negative and positive, depending. Yeah, I'd be really, really careful when you're using words like artificial increase, artificial decrease. Like,
Also, on top of that, it is going to increase inflation when you artificially increase the supply by 3 million homes. Pisco, both are true at the same time. Pisco.
I don't know when he means increase the supply by 3 million homes. He must mean, because that would decrease inflation.
Housing supply is going to increase inflation. Help me there.
Yeah, that doesn't make any sense. Oh no! Is this guy about to bail him out? He should just say I misspoke. He either misspoke or he has something fundamentally disconnected here in terms of his understanding of what inflation means.
Inflation when you artificially increase the supply by 3 million homes. Pisco, both are true at the same time. Pisco.
Increasing housing supply is going to increase inflation. Help me there.
What's crazy? What's crazy?
I want to wait. I'm sorry.
Where does the money come from? Pisco.
I'm throwing it over to
Where,
Ira.
does the government spend the money? Pisco.
Wait, there's a question to Pisco, so now Pisco has to respond because you asked a question. So Pisco.
Yeah, so I understand that government expenditures can be inflationary in nature.
No kidding.
Let me finish.
Hold on. Am I crazy, or did pushing the spacebar used to pause and unpause videos in the past? Why do I feel like it doesn't do this on any program anymore? Oh, okay, it does. I'm sorry. Okay. If you're, okay. Getting triggered. Good one.
Sorry, where does the money come from? Pisco?
I'm throwing it over to Ira.
Does the government spend the money? Pisco?
Wait, there's a question to Pisco, so now Pisco has to respond because you asked a question. So Pisco.
Yeah, so I understand that government expenditures can be inflationary in nature.
No kidding.
Government expenditures can be inflationary, or are inflationary in nature. I feel like that's also really reductive, but okay. I mean, like, it could be technically true. But like, let's say, for instance, let's say that like the government collects $1 million in tax receipts. And then let's say that the government spends $500,000. He said it can be? No, he was saying that it's, no, shut the fuck up. Andrew is saying that it's necessarily inflationary. But like, let's say the government collects $1 million in tax receipts or in revenue, and then the government spends $500,000. Is the government spending there inflationary? I mean, like, technically kind of true. Like, if they didn't spend any money at all, it would be less inflation. But it's again, it's like, it's a reductive, stupid. I think that's reductive and stupid.
Let me finish.
If you're going to make a positive claim that there's a strong relationship or a good relationship, whatever you want to say, between the policy proposed by Harris.
No, Pisco said it can be. Oh, sure. It can be. It could be. Yeah, Pisco's right. But Andrew's saying, like, all government spending is bad or all government spending is inflationary. It's like, it's true in the most reductively stupid sense possible, right?
Kidding.
Let me finish.
If you're going to make a positive claim that there's a strong relationship or a good relationship, whatever you want to say, between the policy proposed by Harris, and you have to make it. You know, like Trump's policy of tariffs, a 10% tariff across the board is also in principle inflationary. But don't you have to make a case? Don't you have to make a showing that it's going to noticeably increase more than the any kind of countering effects that other kinds?
Well, I mean, that was a nice whataboutism. Pisco doesn't answer my question.
Or increases in taxes. You know, I'm not sure that it's going to noticeably increase inflation. I'm not sure about that. That's your case you have to make.
Well, Pisco, can we start?
All right.
Okay.
Sorry.
I have to say, Andrew, my feelings are hurt for you to call me a liberal scumbag. I thought we were cool. I still love you, but that's okay.
Nice to see you again, IRI. How are you?
I'm good.
I noticed your anti-Semitic remarks you made towards Laura Loomer. That wasn't very nice, IRI.
Well, I'm Jewish, so it's kind of hard for me to be anti-Semitic, but okay.
And his ideas to his family, you know?
But I'm happy for your success. You've been doing great, so I'm happy for you. As far as the jobs go, there are 5 million more jobs in America today than February 2020 before the pandemic. And you guys said these are because people have 3 jobs. But the thing is, we've had a record unemployment rate. It's been below 4%, or it was below 4% for a record stretch we haven't seen since the 60s. We hit record unemployment 3.4% below even what Trump accomplished. So I feel like a lot more people in this country are employed. And this isn't the case that you guys portray. Everybody's got a part-time job.
At Destiny, it can be inflationary, but that can be good sometimes, depending on the state of the economy. Andrew seems to imply inflation is always bad. I don't even know if it would. I don't even know if governments. The thing is, I don't know if it would necessarily even be inflationary, because if your economy is growing, like your total inputs and outputs are growing, and your government spending at the same time, I feel like I can conceive of ways to government spend that wouldn't necessarily be inflationary. Like, let's say that you brought in 1,000 workers to start like working on some military base or some bullshit, and then you paid them a whole bunch of money, or not a whole bunch of money, you paid them money or whatever to bring them in. So this is just pure government spending. So money is going in there. But it's not entering the economy in other ways, or in certain ways to inflate certain assets. I'm trying to think if because then they would be spending the money in the economy, so it would be, but they'd also be producing stuff too. I don't know if I'm not sure if. Let me think of a better example. Let me think for a second. The thing is, like, one person couldn't come in and produce every single asset class where you'd see inflation, so it's hard to imagine. But like, I don't think I would say, I don't know if I would feel that government spending is always going to be inflationary, it's always going to lead to inflation. Like, I feel like there are other factors in the economy where the government can spend money in certain ways that could be more inflationary, and the government can spend certain money in other ways that would grow the economy in a way that wouldn't be seen as inflationary. It probably just depends on the way you spend, would be my guess. But also, yeah, inflationary isn't always necessarily a bad thing either, too.
Everybody has a part-time job, but I just what's crazy. Well, that's wrong. Everybody's got a part-time gig, a side gig, a side hustle. Yeah, I don't believe your numbers, even if you show them to me. I know too many people in my everyday life, even if it's anecdotal. You can just go ask anybody.
The workers would obviously use that money in the economy. Sure, but the workers can also create other things that are being purchased in the economy, right? Like, I guess this would be my question. Let's say that you have an economy where there are 100 people, and let's say that those 100 people buy 100 apples a year, right? Let's say that the government spent money to bring in 50 people, okay? But those 50 people produced another 100 apples. Well, 100 people buying 100 apples a year, if you bring in 50 more people, well, if the government is funding them, the total cost of an apple, you would expect it to increase because now you've got 150 people chasing the same 100 apples and the government has given money to those other 50 people. But if they're producing 100 more apples and now there's 200 apples for 150 people, maybe the price might go. So I don't know if it would necessarily be inflationary. That's what I'm saying. I don't know if, because as your economy grows, the way that the government can spend money could theoretically not cause inflation. I'm not sure how you would even, I'm just saying that the relationships are probably more complicated than just government spending equal inflationary, equal bad, equal, yeah.
Got to do two things.
Why do you not
Everybody has
believe
to.
the numbers?
Because you can go ask 10 random people at HEB or Walmart or wherever, and they all will tell you they're doing two things. And there's no way that this sample size. Sure, it's anecdotal, but when it's every time, you know, listen, we've already caught you cooking the books of the job numbers. Why would I believe you with this 5% bullshit?
You understand?
I mean, it's clear that y'all are lying. Y'all lied about Biden. Y'all lied about Biden. Y'all every time y'all say Kamala's got a policy, half the time it's just Trump's policies. Listen, it sounds like you got two.
There is still more total money in the economy, so your analogy doesn't work. Why does total money in the economy matter if there's more total goods and services as well that you can spend money on?
Half some nothing. And what basically that equals out to is a whole lot of nothing. And y'all are sitting here just trying to pass off vagaries and nebulous policy and buzzwords like opportunity economy and say we're going to fix it. Well,
why? I don't know why this guy's ever invited to anything. He just seems like, I don't know why he's ever on any of these things.
Well, you know, Trump asked a valiant question. Hey, 3.5 years, y'all ain't done shit. It's only got worse. Well, why has it been fixed since then? And nobody's been able to answer that here. Y'all just keep saying, oh.
Does anybody want to answer that question?
I would like to ask, what is your guys' solution for the housing crisis? Because
before you skip over to the what about, can you answer his question?
Why haven't you fixed everything? Is that the question?
No, his question is.
First time we didn't have a transition with the previous administration. Donald Trump took a giant dump on the floor and set everything up for disaster. So they had to do a little bit of cleanup work.
Wait, let him finish. Wait. Gibbs got to finish. Ira gets to finish.
Let me finish. The whole world has been suffering through economic problems. This is not an American-centric thing. So we've done pretty well compared to the rest of the world.
We sure have. And what's more, in 2 years, we only had Congress for 2 years, and those 2 years, there's a ton of bipartisan legislation passed. The CHIPS Act, the Infrastructure Act, the other kind of weird gun legislation that was bipartisan in nature.
Y'all had the presidency for 12 of the last 16 years, Pisco. Like, what do you mean? Like, y'all have had the leader of the free world, and it's been this dog shit for like all the whole time.
Why doesn't it turn into a civics lesson? You understand that Congress is the one that passes
a civics lesson? Okay, you know what executive orders are? Like, yeah, I mean, you act like they don't have any control.
Hang on. When we try to do major executive action, for example, and you may not agree with underlying policy, but Biden made a promise with student loan, and you might say that that's stupid or whatever. But when the administration tries to do stuff, who are the first people suing? It's Republican governors, Republican individuals. They're trying to stop as much as they can.
Great, Pisco. They don't put anything on Trump's feet if they talk to Congress, Pisco. If it's all Congress, then don't put it on Trump's feet.
In fact,
but Trump had both halves of Congress, so Trump can't really use that excuse, right?
But that's not to say the president doesn't have a lot of power.
No, he has a lot of power. 10 seconds ago, he barely anything to do with anything. Now suddenly he has a lot of power.
And they just lied again. I just got a source saying that 54% of Americans are doing side jobs now.
Let's let Pisco finish.
They're just lying.
In terms of the economy, the presidency can obviously, I guess, in terms of chain of command, you have the Federal Reserve there, which has a lot of influence on prices, that kind of thing. But in terms of direct appropriations and kind of major legislation, tax changes, that's all coming through Congress. The president has some role in what they can do with the administrative state. That's all things that you guys don't agree with.
Man, are you tired from backpedaling, Pisco?
And there's no backpedaling whatsoever.
10 seconds ago. The president has almost no power.
You got like sticks on That's what you're doing.
You guys are asking.
Andrew is so good when it comes to like debate, like rhetoric, like argumentation. Like he's good at that, but he's so dumb. It's very like it's an annoying mismatch of Andrew is what people accuse me of being, where he can be like very entertaining, very snappy. He's good at like doing the hardcore, debate or argumentation stuff, but he never has great information to back up any of what he's saying. It's very annoying. Are all conservatives just ignorant on civics? To be fair, nobody knows anything about civics. I barely know anything about civics. And that's only after reading all these cases and everything.
asking, for example, why haven't they done the housing thing in the 4 years? They haven't had Congress.
Okay,
I know there's a lot
Rob,
of
I know you've been waiting. Rob, wait, guys, please,
Go ahead,
please. Okay, I know, Rob, you want to talk, but Turk has been waiting, and Joe has been waiting very patiently. I have you after them. I just wanted to make sure I checked with them. Turk, were you still waiting, or has the moment passed?
I can still bring it back to the topic that you brought up, Dylan, if you'd like me to do that.
Could I do Joe first, because it might be relevant?
Sure, yeah.
Joe?
Yeah, and I'm sorry, Pisco, for having to push at you too. A little frustration that I do have with the Biden-Harris administration, and then by extension, now the Harris administration, and Rob brought this out a little bit in his argumentation, is that there are still issues within underserved communities that haven't been actualized and promised. And something that I wish was clearly articulated in the Harris administration would be something like, to get very sort of specific, we saw in New Jersey about a drop in monthly revenue from hospitals across the board, anywhere from 30 to 40%. And that's a little bit higher in more underserved areas like Camden and Newark. And something that the person I voted for the Senate, Larry Hamm, was advocating for was an expansion of the infrastructure bill to cover things like emergency centers and hospitals, which is something that currently doesn't exist in the infrastructure bill as currently. So that's a frustration that I have with the Harris administration. And if we want to get really specific in the ideas of
Biden administration, you mean?
In the, what did I say? What's
Harris administration?
In the Biden administration. Oh, that's it.
Yeah, it's really difficult to differentiate the two nowadays, isn't it?
I mean, that's not
Consider he's on the beach every day,
That's not here or there in the misspeak, but my concern there is that there are things that could help. And I think it is legitimate to question the 3 million houses plan.
If I may jump in, because I do have something to add on this specific point. So to the points that were addressed here.
Can I finish my house thing and then I'll end up playing Golf Rob, is that all right? Or... Yeah. So the thing is, we saw, for example, in the housing crisis, right? For Black households, about 8% of Black households were lost during that from 2008. Something that I think could have been really cool to hear and see is an acknowledgement from whether it be the Biden administration or the Harris campaign articulating that, because something that would be cool to have coupled along with that is in those sort of first buyer initiatives and stuff like that to include individuals who lost their home during those foreclosures for people with subprime mortgages. That I think would be a very easy rhetorical thing that could move a lot of people in the center. A lot of people in the center probably were affected by that statistically, which obviously would have an impact for Black voters in particular, but also to all voters who were affected by that. You know what I'm saying?
I'm gonna let Rob. I have a response back. I'm gonna let Rob talk.
Oh, sure. Screwed stuff up. Okay, to respond to this first, I'm going to go where I'll get to right to what Joe said there, sort of in the spirit of it. But notice how in all of this talk about jobs, I can talk about the specific job numbers. Yes, unemployment numbers look like they're doing okay. That's because it doesn't count people that are no longer trying to get work. Labor force participation is still lower than it was in pre-pandemic levels.
Okay, yeah, Rob doesn't know anything about economics either. I'm so sorry. Okay, just as a quick thing, okay? When we talk about unemployment in the United States, there are different numbers that you can talk about. There are different ways that you can measure unemployment. So, for instance, let's imagine an economy with 100 million people, and let's say that 50 million people are working in that economy, okay? Well, is that 50% unemployment? Well, let's think for a moment. Okay, do we count people under the age of 18, right? Should we count a 1-year-old as being unemployed? Well, okay, probably not. Okay, so let's knock off children. What about people who are over the age of retirement, over 65, right? Okay, sure. Probably not. What about people who are, let's say you have a mom who's staying at home, who's taking care of a kid. Or let's say that you've got a guy who, financial independence and retire early, whatever, one of these people, right? Let's say that they retire at 35 or 40. Or let's say that you've got, 3 or 4 roommates, they're all living together, and one guy's like, I'm going to take a year off. I got money saved up. Fuck it. I don't care. I'm not going to work. I'm just going to hang out, whatever. Do you want to count these people in your unemployment numbers if they're not looking for work, right? Probably not. So there are different ways, or you could if you wanted to. There are different ways to measure unemployment. I think they use all the U's, at least 1 through 6. But the way that we refer to unemployment in the United States is usually called the U3 number, okay, which is our shorthand for unemployment. Unemployment rate in the United States is the U3 unemployment, which excludes people not seeking work from that number, okay? Now, every now and then, somebody will come out and somebody will give this ingenious take where they're saying, well, actually, that's not the real unemployment in the United States. Actually, the number's actually way fucking higher, and nobody's actually talking about this, okay? And they're usually citing something like, I don't know if it's called the U6. I think U6 and labor force participation rate are different, but these numbers basically always track each other. Like if you overlap them, if you look at them, like they're generally pretty similar. You're not getting these massively huge spikes in U6 in a way that has never been seen before, like U3. No, they're generally they kind of track. When you talk about something like, let's look at the St. Louis Fed Labor Force LBPR. How is the U6 different? I think the U6 includes, labor force participation rate. Wait, right? I think the U6 includes discouraged workers. I don't know what other types of workers they include, but to be honest, you're dating yourself. Nobody says that shit talking point. Rob literally just said this shit talking point. Let me check real quick. What is labor force participation rate? Wait. It's defined by the current population survey as the number of people in the labor force as a percentage of the civilian non-institutional population. The participation rate is a percentage of the population that is either working or actively looking for work. I'm trying to think if this is the one that includes... wait. I'm thinking this is the one that has senior citizens factored in, right? Oh, Investopedia. Hold on one second. The U.S. government's labor force participation rate formula is the number of people age 16 and older who are employed or actively seeking employment divided by the total non-institutionalized civilian working age population. Okay. So one thing to keep in mind as you get more and more people that are getting older, because our population is a little top heavy, I think because of the baby boomers, even if everything in the economy more or less stays the same per age bracket as a percentage, you would expect to see labor force participation rate drop off a bit because older people are more likely to be retired and not wanting to work anymore than younger people. But I believe labor force participation rate will still factor these people in. So when you're looking at this here, you're seeing that the labor force participation rate is lower, 62, 63%, than it was throughout the 80s, 90s, 2000s. This is to be expected somewhat. Now, I'm not necessarily saying that that the number right now is good or that these numbers were bad. I'm just saying that labor force participation, when somebody pulls this number out, you need to be very suspicious of why are we talking labor force participation rate. You're probably going to need to bring another number out if we're going to talk about this, because this number here is going to be heavily biased towards certain age groups of people. That's just a thing to keep in mind. Whenever you hear somebody bring up the secret unemployment numbers, like the forbidden unemployment that nobody's allowed to talk about, usually they're talking about labor force participation rate, and there's a reason why we don't usually use that number to just take a snapshot of the economy. Yeah.
What happened was a lot of numbers. I'm going to go where I'll get to right to what Joe said there, sort of in the spirit of it. But notice how in all of this talk about jobs, I could talk about the specific job numbers. Yes, unemployment numbers look like they're doing okay. That's because it doesn't count people that are no longer trying to get work. Labor force participation is
like unemployment has never counted people. Well, or I don't know when the U3 started, but unemployment doesn't count people not looking for work. U3 unemployment has always been like that. When you talk about unemployment rate in the United States, you're talking about the U3. The U3 doesn't include discouraged workers. It hasn't. It just doesn't. That's just not how the U3 works. Okay, I don't know, but it doesn't give the definition here, but yeah. But the U3, when people talk about unemployment rate in the United States, it just doesn't. It just doesn't measure discouraged workers, people not seeking work.
It's still lower than it was in pre-pandemic levels. What happened was a lot of people got so frustrated after the lockdowns and things like that that they never tried to go back to work. In addition to increased welfare benefits and PPP loans and other stimulus checks that were sending them, many people never went back to work. So unemployment numbers look way better than they actually are. The real unemployment number is probably around 7%. And none of
like saying anytime somebody says real unemployment, they're always full of shit. That's always a fucking lie. When somebody says real unemployment, that means that they're engaged in some propaganda bullshit every single fucking time. There were people that quit after COVID and didn't come back, but a lot of those people are also people that were just like, fuck it, I'm retiring now and I'm done. I'm out, right? You can, somebody linked this. Yeah, I don't know how PPP loans are making people not go back to work. PPP loans were offering money to employers to literally keep people on payroll, so I don't know what that means. Well, I do. It means he's full of shit. Population pyramid for the United States, 2000, 2010, and 2020. So you can kind of see, I guess you've got like this bump here of people that are getting older from 40 to 39. You've got this little bump here that I think this is 2010. So 35 to 44, this bump moves up here from like 49 to 54, and now it's moved up here from like 59 to 64. This is 2020, I guess, right? So as it gets, as time moves on and this bump moves up, again, labor force participation rate is going to drop, but that's not bad. It just means we've got more older people who are probably going to be retired, right? And we're not making as many younger people. So
none of that matters anyways. The fact that you have to work multiple jobs and we count each of those multiple jobs as a job, but people still, real wage growth is barely moving.
I don't know what that had to do with anything, but okay.
The needle since the Harris-Biden administration, where under Trump it was going up by leaps and bounds. So people know, and that's why all the polling shows that people feel they were economically better under the Trump administration than under the Harris-Biden administration, which is why what I said, which Pisco deflected from, was no one wants to talk about that. Instead, you'll talk about one random policy. Oh, they're going to spend money and build houses, that's it. And the rest of it will be, as you've seen IRI try to do here, make excuses that in the first term, congressional term, when Harris and Biden were there, where they controlled the House and had the tiebreaker in the Senate, they didn't do any of this shit. And what
I'm pretty sure they were probably trying to take the country up from underneath the avalanche that was COVID, that the entire world was dealing with. Wouldn't that be a self-report on Trump admin too, since they also use the same U3? Everybody uses U3. Yeah, that's the unemployment rate. Everybody uses the U3. It's stupid whenever somebody says real unemployment and they're not an economist, or they could be an economist and they're talking shit too, but yeah.
What's IRI's response to that? Well, that's because Trump didn't have a peaceful transition of power. Exactly. What they're trying to do is cover for Harris, which is why she's not out there talking to the American people, talking to adversarial press. She's hiding, just like Biden hid, because they can't defend their record. And to the extent that they're trying to come up with policies, most of it's just cribbing things Republicans and Trump have said, to the point where even Joe Lewis correctly points out he's frustrated as a lefty that Harris is actually on stage talking about how she supports gun rights. They always become more Republican because they understand that their policies will not get them elected, which is why Bernie Sanders said the other day, oh, in reality, what's going on is Harris has to say what she needs to say to get elected. Exactly. That's how bad she is. She's a chameleon. It's ran by people behind her. She's not really doing anything. So the question I have for Pisco, to pivot off what Joe's saying, is, one, when Harris was there and was basically running the show because Biden had dementia, which you and all of the Democrats covered up.
What did the Democrats go for major gun legislation with Biden in office? Were there any attempts by, I'm trying to think, I know there were some big shootings. I know they pay lip service to it sometimes, but like, were there any big things right now the Democrats tried to pass legislation relating to guns that made it out of either chamber? There was one idea for an assault weapons. Yeah, there was an idea for an assault weapons ban, but I feel like it never has enough support in the Democratic Party. I don't think these things ever get anywhere.
For because you're liars that don't care about democracy. Why didn't she do any of these policies like create massive amounts of houses? Why did the policies that they pushed through end up leading to massive inflation? Why did they lie to people over and over again and say actually the economy is great when people were struggling miserably? And even if they couldn't have got it done,
the Bipartisan Safer Communities Act. Let's see. Clarification of federal firearms license requirements. So this is for FFLs. That's a pretty small percentage of the population. Funding for state red flag laws. That could be a big deal, depending on what those look like. Partial closure of the boyfriend loophole and straw purchases. Maybe this could count. I would have to see the specific provisions, but I feel like I haven't heard conservatives complain about this much. I feel like if there were big gun things in here, I feel like I would have heard about it complained a lot more, because I feel like I've never heard a complaint from Republicans about this. It was introduced by Marco Rubio, sure.
through Congress in the past 2 years. I disagree with that because they basically got everything they wanted in the Inflation Reduction Act, which was basically Green New Deal light, as Joe Biden admitted the other day. And lastly, they tried to push through shit in congressional or executive orders that they knew would be overturned, like the bailouts of student loans. So why didn't they try executive orders to build housing and to reduce inflation? The truth is because they didn't give a shit. Just like they lie to, maybe you'll appreciate this, Joe, black Americans every election year. For 2 years, they don't give a shit about black Americans until it's an election year, and then all of a sudden they pretend to give a shit. They don't care about people in rural America, and then all of a sudden they pretend to give a shit. Why didn't they do these amazing things? None of you have an answer. The Democrats were in charge. Harris was in charge, and she didn't do shit.
Next question, Rob.
Okay, that was an extensive question, and I don't just want to throw it to Pisco because I want to throw it to other people too. But one moment, I do also want to say, if you want to ask questions to anybody on the panel or the panel itself, donate your questions, put a message, and the highest ones will get read. We're shilling here.
I understand that to BPS chat. This chat crazy. They're about to donate and say some crazy questions.
It's an interesting point to me that you guys want to pick a fight on policy when it came to the debate. What policies did Trump articulate during that debate besides?
Wait, are you surprised?
Let's let IRI finish. Rob went for a bit. I want to hear an extended response.
Are we doing what about his answer to his question?
Complicated nonsense.
If you listen to this question, he asked a question. He answered to it. Legislation passed. Biden got way more legislation passed during his first 2 years than Trump did. The very first thing that Trump tried to do when he was president was repeal and replace Obamacare. He failed. The next.
What is the actual defense a Democrat can give as to why so many Americans are struggling? There is none. You have to thread the needle on that so unbelievably fucking carefully. It's hard to speak to that because the reality is most Americans aren't struggling, but people feel that way and they talk about it a lot on social media. So you have to be incredibly careful how you talk about that because you have to feed into the delusions of the public while also being realistic and reasonable. Remember, there's a ton of Republicans that thought that the economy flipped completely 180 the very microsecond Biden assumed office, and then all of a sudden the economy became horrible. And it's like, wait, really? But so yeah, I don't know. there are issues with the economy, and there are issues that need to be addressed, especially stuff probably relating to housing, maybe education. But people that have this idea that like everything is unaffordable and everything is fucked, and when it's just not, it doesn't show up in any data anywhere, and then people spend all this time trying to like, well, it's just like, yeah, it's a difficult needle to thread.
Next thing he did was the tax cuts that the Republicans had been clamoring to do for decades. And then what did he get done after that? What were his major signature pieces of legislation? You really want to compare the legislative track record between Biden and Trump?
During your question, why hasn't Biden admin removed the Trump tariffs? Colin was asked about this, but she somewhat dodged the question the debate. I don't even know which Trump tariffs there were or what hasn't been removed. I'm not sure. We can find out. Trump tariffs. Could things be better for people even if it isn't horrible? Things can always be better. Yeah, of course. There must be like a State Department website where you can see like all the current U.S. tariffs or something, right? I would imagine. You might just not familiar. Oh, somebody made a post on the subreddit about this. Oh, okay. This would have been what I thought, but. Oh, this is true as well. Even though tariffs are bad economic policy, people do like tariffs. They sound good in principle. It sounds awesome because nobody really knows what a tariff is. But if you start tariffing and then you get retaliatory tariffs, you can't really just get rid of your tariff. You have to reach an agreement with the other side so that you both get rid of them. Otherwise, you're going to fuck yourself over. Yeah.
Trump?
Yeah, give me 30 seconds. Okay, give me 30 seconds. I'll answer this. Because what Kamala Harris is running on is being an agent of change. What you can't get around is the American people know that economically and security-wise, they were better off under a Trump administration than a Harris administration. So what's happening is the Harris administration is trying to run on, we're the agents of change. Things will be different. To why I say then why, if she's been there in charge for 4 years, haven't they done any of these things?
I wonder if anybody will ever deal with the fact that Republicans never have to answer for their wild deficit spending. If the economy was so fucking good under Donald Trump, why did he have to deficit spend so much? Why couldn't they balance the budget? When Donald Trump's first budget would have been after 2017? Like, why did we have to have these? Can I go back a little further? Didn't Obama reduce the deficit by 2/3? No shot. Obama definitely deficit spent. Federal surplus or deficit. Okay, so surplus is above the line. And then deficit is below the line, right? Like, why was Donald Trump still deficit spending? This seems so dumb. Didn't Obama reduce the deficit by 2/3? I'm sorry. I mixed up deficit with debt. Obama did reduce the spending deficits through his administration, Obama's, I'm trying to think, I don't know when the first budget you would take credit for is. So like, would it be 2008 or would it be 2009? Like, I don't know how these are measured, but obviously you had the housing collapse. Obama's obviously deficit spending. You're supposed to after a recession or during a recession, right? But then the deficit is decreasing, it's decreasing, it's decreasing, it's decreasing up until around 2015, 2016, it increases a bit again. And then under Donald Trump, why? All this additional deficit spending. It's getting worse, but the economy was getting better. Why? Like, the economy was doing really well under Trump, sure, but it was in part, at least, due to the massive deficit spending. Can you explain what deficit spending is? Deficit spending is, so basically a budget for the government is, let's say that I collect $1 million in, oh fuck, if I knew how to use Excel, I could draw such a pretty graph of this. Let's say that for 1 year, let's say that I collect, let's call this $1 million in tax receipts, and let's say that I spend $900,000, all right? Then let's say the next year, let's say I collect $1 million in tax receipts, and then let's say that I spend, we'll say $1.1 million. Then let's say the next year, let's say we do a big tax cut. Let's say that we only get $800,000 in tax receipts, and then let's say that we spend $1 million. So you would say that for this first year, you could say we had a $100,000 surplus, a budget surplus. You'd say for this year, you had a $100,000 budget deficit. And then for this year, maybe you'd say we had a $200,000 budget deficit, okay? What that means is that the government in the very first year, I guess maybe you could say the government like deleted currency from the economy. I think it's fair to say that, right? Because the government took in $100,000 and the government's not spending that money. So if you were to have if you were to draw a graph of like the government debt, right? We'll say debt, like money the government owes. Let's say that we're starting at zero. We'll say that the government is sitting on an extra 100K. Let's say that the next year we have $100,000 that the government spends extra. I don't think you would accrue any debt. You wouldn't have to issue any bonds because the government is literally just has this money sitting here, right? I don't know if it sits in a bank account or what. I mean, we've always had a debt, so I don't even know. But like you've got a wash between $100,000 surplus, $100,000 deficit, and then the next year here we have a $200,000 deficit in the budget. That means that the government has to issue debt in order to raise the money to spend that in the economy. So we have a $200,000 worth of debt. Let's say that next year the government spends and takes in the same amount of money. You'd still have this national debt, but your budget deficit would be nothing. So budget deficit is just the difference between the amount of money that you take in as the government and the amount of money that you spend as the government. Yeah. Isn't it the ultimate rhetorical blunder for Dems to pretend the economy is rough when it's not, when Republicans always say Dem economy is bad and Republican economy is good, no matter what the fact of the matter is? When the economy is the most important issue, you can't concede it on. Yeah, I don't know how you deal with that. I'm not sure. The thing is, Democrats have to play in this world. The double standard is impossible. You can't survive in a double standard world. And Republicans can always say their economies are great, and they can always say the Democratic economies are horrible, and they never get punished or fact checked, or because Republican voters go by vibes based on how they think the economy is doing. So you're fucked. Yeah, right. I don't know how you deal with that. Yeah. Could deficit spending be thought of as another form of increasing the financial burden on citizens and another form of taxes? No. The government, it's kind of hard or weird to think about this, but government spending has nothing to do with taxes, and it has nothing to do with money from your citizens. The government spending has absolutely nothing to do with the amount of money that the government takes in. They're technically different, completely different things. But if the government is spending more than they take in through money, then they have to issue debt in order to cover the expenditures. Now, if the government is taking in more money than they're spending, arguably that's more taxing on the citizens, because it means citizens gave up more in taxes than what the government would need to cover their expenditures. But if the government is spending more, then you have to pay that back in the future. You don't have to. Well, you kind of have. You should. You probably have to. Nobody knows right now. But you have to pay that back in the form of interest payments and in the form of paying debt back in the future. So, so extra expenditures help the economy and they help citizens, but it has to be paid back at some point probably. But there's nothing wrong with deploying debt, even that you have to pay back in the future, because you could have a net present value plus investment means that it's better to spend the money now and assume debt than it would be to just not spend any of the money and not grow your economy instead. But that's more fundamental economic bullshit. Yeah. Can you explain what taxes? I don't know what that question means. Do you think people feel like the economy is bad because they're seeing inflationary results in the commodities that they most often buy? Like if the stock market is shit, not everybody's going to feel it immediately. But if the price of a Big Mac rose by $4, then everyone is going to say the economy is shit. Yeah, I mean, things like that. There are items like that people see the price go up and they feel bad about it. But people are also just retarded. I don't know what else to say. I remember my grandpa used to say to me shit like, yeah, when I was growing up, gas was like 50 cents or whatever a gallon. And now look, it's like $2. It's crazy. And I was like, okay, grandpa, but when you were growing up, I mean, like $1 was worth a lot. Like things were different, right? Like people don't intuitively understand inflation. It just feels bad. And then what do you do? Yeah. So deficit is based on the yearly budget, while debt refers to each cumulative year. Yeah. Instead of deficit, you should just think of it as a shortfall. A deficit is a budget shortfall, and a budget surplus means that you got more money than you needed to spend. It's a surplus, right? But the debt and the deficit are two different things. That's why Bill Clinton, we still had a big national debt, but he was posting budget surpluses. But when somebody says like Obama cut the budget deficit, that means that Obama is decreasing the amount of new debt being accrued every single year, accrued. No, incurred. He's decreasing the deficit that he's incurring is decreasing, meaning he's borrowing less and less every year, but the debt is still increasing every single year because there's still money being borrowed. It would be like saying I cut down on my credit card spending. I spent $10,000 last month and only $5,000 this month, but you're still spending on a credit card, if that makes sense. Yeah. Isn't the issue that people have with inflation is that people's wages aren't keeping up with the inflation rate? Maybe, but it's really, 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 really hard to measure. It's hard to measure all of that. All of it is incredibly difficult to measure because either we've gone over this before. Like there are some things that it's hard to capture this on a graph. It's hard to capture it in an individual's life. It's hard to capture a lot of this stuff. Like for instance, so like you have this weird thing happening where during COVID, real median wages were at like all-time highs. So that seems really good. But then I think Rob might have just even used this talking point. Wages haven't recovered in the Biden-Harris administration. Real median wages have indeed fallen. But again, you have to think about the number. You have to think about what we're measuring here. The median weekly wages, the median number, the middle point number of all the wages in the economy, right? If I had an economy where I had 10 people that were all earning $100,000 a year, and I had 100 people who were all earning $30,000 a year, right? If I were to just kill 50 of these people, I've boosted my median earnings so much. Or if I fire 50 people, right? Because if we fire 50 people, then technically if median is the middle point here, actually, we wouldn't have changed our median earnings, but you get the point. It's not going to be as bifurcated as this. But if you remove a lot of people from the economy or add a lot of people to the economy that aren't making that much money, then you're dramatically shifting your median wages without actually doing a good thing or a bad thing necessarily. You're just doing a thing. So Econoboy called this composition effects. Okay, maybe. That might be the technical term for it, composition effect. So like here during the height of COVID, who's still working? Service workers aren't working. All of them got fired or they got laid off or they got whatever because they were fucked. But work from home people, software developers, white collar workers, whatever, people that could do work from home jobs, they were still working. Their jobs pay better, right? As jobs started to get added back into the economy, we started to rehire service workers, we started to rehire construction workers, all these people. These people don't make as much money as these people. So we saw the median earnings drop, But this was good. It's not good because the median earnings dropped. It was good because the economy was adding back more jobs. They just happened to be lower paying jobs, right? So it's hard to capture all of this as a snapshot. People look at the consumer pricing index, so how much would it cost to pay for a certain basket of goods? Although some people do, what is a CPI minus housing? Some people do like CPI without housing costs, or is CPI the one that doesn't include housing costs? Or there's another index that's like CPI. I think minus housing. Yeah, there's a lot of ways to measure this. It's very, very, very complicated. Is it core CPI? Isn't deficit spending necessarily inflationary? When the U.S. government spends more than it has collected, isn't it injecting into the economy money that wasn't already there? Yeah, but if the economy is creating more goods and services to buy, remember, inflation means, in a very, very, very simple sense, in a very reductive and pointless sense, you can say that inflation means you've got more money chasing fewer supplies, but it could also mean the same amount of money chasing, or I'm sorry, you could say that inflation is more money chasing the same supply, but you could also say inflation is the same amount of money chasing less supply, right? Inflation there's two halves to this equation. So if the government were to find a way to inject money into the economy that dramatically increased the amount of goods and services produced, that could be deflationary, even though the government is injecting money into the economy, right? It's not as simple as just saying government spending equals inflation, or even saying inflation equals bad. Macroecon is gay. I can say that. It's just, there's a lot going on here. Yeah.
Things. You then respond, let me finish. You respond with, but they actually got a lot of shit done. They actually got to do a lot of what they wanted. Sure. Exactly. And the American people are not happy with it. So then your counter argument, which is, well, they couldn't get things done that they wanted.
Have you looked into buy now, pay later loans and how they aren't included in credit scoring formulas and national statistics? So admitting I haven't ever been personally involved in these markets, but I've watched my parents do them. My impression of like buy here, pay here, stuff like that, or like layaway they used to do, any of those things are always horrible programs that are just there to abuse poor people that have bad credit that can't qualify for loans otherwise. Those are always horrible things. Don't ever participate in any of that, but in my opinion. But maybe they've changed in 20 years, but
get done. They actually got to do a lot of what they wanted. Sure. Exactly. And the American people are not happy with it. So then your counter argument, which is, well, they couldn't get things done that they wanted done, but this time they will, is bullshit, as you're admitting. They did get it.
I think people just don't get why inflation is necessary. Why can't the money's value be static or stay within a margin of variance? Isn't infinite inflation bad? Infinite inflation is bad, but I think the idea is some inflation is good because you want to encourage a velocity of money. You want to encourage money to flow through the economy, and you want to discourage people from just sitting on it and doing nothing with it. You don't want people to think that if I just stick my money in a bank and I don't spend, or if I don't do anything with it, then I'm actually going to be better off than if I do anything with it. So a little bit of inflation for you to feel like nothing is happening if your money's just sitting there is good because it encourages people to invest it or to buy stuff.
Legislatively done, and America has given it the thumbs down.
Why did we have a historically good midterm? Why did we expand our majority in the Senate during an economic downturn? Why did we make Trump a one-term president, the first since George H.W. Bush? If your leadership
because of abortion
and your policies
because of social issue, it's because of social issues. It has nothing to do with the economy, which is
economic downturn. It should have been a bloodbath.
No,
what you guys are saying is that your policies are not popular.
People knew that Trump's economy got shut down.
I don't know how Econoboy didn't know this stuff, but you were embarrassingly wrong about capital gains tax and asset secured loans. Bring me on from Stream Disagreements. 5 minutes, in and out. Embarrassingly wrong, he says. Embarrassingly wrong. All right, turn off the stream. What do you want?
All right, muted. Hey, can you hear me good?
Yep.
Okay, so the whole capital gains tax thing, people are saying, okay, it's the whole loans thing, right? And when Econoboy basically came in and said, hey, I don't get it. Why do you think people are even wanting this capital gains tax? And you said it has to do with money now is worth more than money later. Kind of know what I'm talking about? Vaguely remember what you said?
I feel like if he asked me that question, my response, I think, was it feels bad that somebody can essentially realize a gain without paying taxes on realizing the gain, that they can take out a bunch of money now, basically in the form of a loan, without ever actually having to increase their tax basis in some investment.
Right, but of course, that loan has to be paid back eventually. And you are aware of this, of course, and your explanation for why this is a problem is the whole money now, money later. But that doesn't make sense because banks are very aware of money now being worth more than money later, and that is priced in to the interest rate.
Wait.
like completely priced into the
How?
interest rate. When so
Wait. Hold on.
The-
Just wait. Real
yeah.
quick. Sanity check. What is your background?
No fancy background. What kind of background are you asking about? Education? I'm
Well, I
math
guess
degree
like
in
if
university?
okay, so obviously I work in a very peculiar industry, so I can't speak to norms, but my understanding is like ROI on any type of like business stuff is hopefully if you're taking out money, you're trying to make like at least 10%. For startups, it can be significantly higher, but you're trying to make a decent amount back. Banks don't lend money at 10% though.
Yeah.
So when you say it's priced in,
Because if the bank doesn't lend it, then the bank can't make any money if it doesn't do anything with the money. So
Sure,
it's
but the bank- but the bank's-
it's like
but
an
the bank's
economic
goal for-
transaction.
yeah,
Both
but the-
people benefit.
Yeah, but the bank's goal
Yeah?
of making money isn't to try to make at an equal amount that an investor would make money, right? Their interest rates, their goals are much lower than that, right?
Yeah, because
Well, one is because I think there's
don't
legislation that bans banks. I think like certain banks from taking part in investment markets, right? I think that was a thing that happened after 2007, 2008, where banks weren't like ordinary banks that do mortgages and shit aren't allowed to also double as investment banks anymore. But I'm just saying that like if it is the case that a bank can be really happy and profitable at 2.5% or 3% for a loan, and an individual can take out loans that are asset defended essentially, right? If they can take those loans out and expect to make 10% return on their money, then they could infinitely borrow money and then pay it back with a future loan where everybody's making money.
I agree with everything you're saying,
Okay.
but it's just not it's not a problem. Like there is a reason, there is a good faith reason why there is a problem that the capital gains tax can be said to be attempting to solve, but it has to do with I'll see if you can guess it. If I clue you into estate, when someone dies, what happens to their estate? That's where the loan. See if you can think. Do you want to try, or do you want me to just say it?
I think I know what you're going to say, and I think I already know the answer to it, and I don't think you know the answer to it.
Oh yeah.
Are you
Yeah, go for
are you going to say that the big hack is actually that when people die, they can pass off investments to their children that they've never actually realized to gain in, so the children don't have to pay the taxes on the increase in tax basis?
Yeah, that's all I was going to say.
Yeah, but the
I
answer to
didn't
that is
think
that
were
you
aware of
actually
that.
do have to pay the step-up in basis. It's called stepped-up basis. When an estate dies, the difference between the asset tax basis and what it's sold as when it's transferred is something that you do have to pay taxes against. The reason why we don't see that for a lot of investments or inheritances is because there's a $13 million deduction, I think, on the estate tax. So if your dad dies and he gives you a $10 million investment that he bought for $1 million, you get that investment at $10 million tax basis, and you feel like, oh my God, I just cheated the capital gains tax. But not actually. What actually happened was the estate sells the security, or rather the estate pays to step up the basis in tax, but that $9 million increase in tax basis is accounted for in the estate tax exemption.
Damn. Okay, you're cluing me in. I'm gonna look into that, but I'm satisfied knowing that you're already clued into that, and I'll do some more research on my own because I'm not an economist.
I love you, buddy. Be careful.
Thank you.
The little thing that he's talking about is called, there's a name for this. I think the estate tax exemption I think is on $13 million, but basically when the owner of the estate dies, you can step up the basis using that estate tax exemption, which is why some people feel like it's a hack because, oh my God, I didn't have to pay the taxes on the capital gains of my father, but you do. It's just accounted for basically in the step up in basis. It resets the cost basis of an appreciated inherited asset for tax purposes. But okay, sorry.
They knew it.
Andrew,
Then
your
it
mic-
got shut down when they were thriving.
Andrew, I just quick thing. Your mic keeps
What's up,
peaking
Claude?
when you talk. It like peaks and it peaks and it's kind of hard to hear you. I'm just letting you know. Pisco, you wanted to go?
Yeah, I want to answer to Rob's cavalcade of nonsense earlier, and so he started off by saying, and can we get quiet in the peanut gallery, Andrew? Like I don't know why you feel the need every 2 seconds. I think it's like you're scared of when I talk because you only interrupt me. I mean, this is gonna be a problem.
We were talking, dummy.
All right. So first of all, he starts with the assumption that we are not okay with speaking about the general economic policy of Harris and Biden, respectively, in terms of what their administration has done. We absolutely are willing to talk about it. We were specifically talking about one policy because that's what Andrew asked us. He asked us to talk about one policy, but you think that we're dodging something. We're dodging the general economic character of what's been going on. We do not shy away from the fact that over the course of the last 4 years, I haven't mentioned the word opportunity economy at all.
Well, we're talking
Why do we have a $13 million deductible on inheritance? Can somebody make a good case for that for me? I feel like Let me check. If it truly is just like a $13 million deduction, I don't know if you can. I feel like they should probably be lower. It seems kind of crazy. You could inherit $10 million tax-free. Your steelman argument is going to be, well, I mean, all of this money has already been paid taxes on by the estate. Like, now you're going to tax it again just because the guy died. But I feel like it should. My guess is it should just be more graduated. Like, if you want to say there should be a $13 million exemption, why not just say that that you have like a progressive taxation up to $13 million? Like, maybe it starts really low, like 2%, and then 5% at, you know, 5 million, and maybe 10% at 10 million, and then when you hit 13 million, then it goes up to the ordinary, whatever the estate tax is. But the exemption is fairly high. But I don't know how much money you're actually honestly recovering in a state. Like, how much money do you make on the expiration of a person? Yeah, I don't know.
Have you heard me? We're talking about the leadership of the country. We're talking about the leadership of this country. Who's better positioned to do it? And based on the previous administration, right?
Well, I want to hear the end of Pisco's statement, and then you can talk. Also, Turk, I have you written down. Eventually, I will bring it back to you.
So he asked, why haven't you done all these things in 4 years? It's
Buy, borrow, die, explained. I'm a private wealth attorney at an international law firm headquartered in the U.S., and I implement buy, borrow, die for a living. The short answer is yes, buy, borrow, die works, and is a devastatingly effective tax elimination strategy. Okay, but I don't want to die, so fuck this. But let's see. Okay, so you purchase an asset. He has a tax basis in the asset. Peter sells the asset. It's a realization event, and he'll be subject to income tax. The asset is a capital asset. Oh, actually, I just thought of a huge counter. I bet I know where this guy's going. Oh, and if that guy that came in actually knew anything about finance, I think I can think of actually a big counter. You shouldn't be able to pay for a step up in basis as part of the estate tax exemption, because that should just be a capital gains appreciation tax. Why are you allowed to use the estate tax exemption to step up the basis? What you should do is the estate should step the basis up, and then the estate should pay the capital gains tax, and then your estate taxes should kick in. That would probably be the better argument against that. I don't know why you're allowed to apply your estate tax exemption to step the basis up of any capital asset. That seems, I don't know what the good argument is for that. Maybe there is a good argument for it, but I don't know. But I bet that's what this guy's going to talk about. Because let's say that I have a $10 million investment. I got $10 million of tax basis and a $20 million investment. Let's say that I sell that the day before I die, and I pay capital gains tax on $10 million or whatever, and then I die, and then I leave it to my children. They just inherit that money, but less all the money that I just paid in taxes. But let's say that I don't sell that asset and I die, and I pass it on to my kids. They can use the estate tax exemption to step the basis up of that investment, and now they don't have to pay the capital gains tax on it. I don't know why that would be the case, but I don't know. But also, I don't know how much money you'd even be making in taxes here by getting rid of this loophole, because this loophole is only going to help you up to $13 million of stepped up basis. It's not going to help like a billionaire, I don't think. But let's see. Let's read what this guy says. I could be totally wrong, but if Peter sells the asset, it's a realization event. He'll be subject to income tax. The asset is a capital asset. Anticipated on the asset for 1 year. He'll receive long-term capital gains treatment and pay income tax at preferential rates if he sold it. Nevertheless, Peter's long-term cap gain rate would be 20%. He'd be subject to the net investment income tax at 20%. If Peter lives in Quahog, okay, don't care. So if Peter were to sell the asset and cash in his gain, he'd have a total tax liability for around $17 million, and his after-tax proceeds would be $91 million. Peter's buddy, Joe, overheard some of his cop buddies talking about how the ultra-wealthy never pay tax because they implement buy, borrow, die, and he shares the idea with Peter. Peter decides to look into it. Peter goes to the big city and hires a private wealth attorney who connects him with an investment banker at Quahog Sachs. The investment banker might give Peter a loan or line of credit of up to $97 million. Oh, borrow. I didn't even read this. Buy, borrow, die. Borrowing, if you borrow 10 million, to make an investment and have the investment appreciate? No. Hold on. Let's see. No, oh no, the borrow is just like living off of loans. That's what I'm thinking. Never mind. Hold on. Oh, Quahog. My bad. Quahog? Is that how you pronounce it? Peter's paid no taxes. Okay, might give loan or line of credit. Okay, die. Peter's been living off the asset-backed loans / lines of credit, and his asset has continued to appreciate in value. Let's say that value is surpassed with an annual rate of return of 8%. The asset now has fair market value of $740 million. When Peter dies, the base of the asset is adjusted to the asset's fair market value on Peter's date of death. In other words, Peter's base is $50 million. The asset is just $740 million. You can now sell the asset tax-free because gain is computed by subtracting adjusted basis from the sales proceeds. Can use the cash to pay back the loans. He's paid no income. Oh, I don't think this is correct. I'm either mistaken here or this guy's lying about his background, but his name is Taxonomics and he's a mod here, so I don't think so. I don't think he'd be lying, right? There's something that's happening here that I don't understand. When Peter dies, I don't think you can step the basis up of your investment when you die for free. I think that step up in basis has to come from somewhere. It can't just be stepped up without. Ordinarily, your estate tax step up in basis comes from the estate tax exemption, I believe. Let me check. Let me keep reading. Or wait, somebody said keep reading here. Wait, hold on. Actual, if that weren't the case, the ultra wealthy wouldn't have to pay private wealth attorneys like me upwards of $2,500 an hour for their $2,500 an hour. I don't believe that, but okay. For their tax asset protection, I save them. This type of lending is generally not economically feasible. It takes a net worth exceeding around $300 million. If you're worth less than that, you're not going to be able to command attractive loan / line of credit terms from investment banks. You're going to have to get a plain vanilla product from a retail lender, which is going to have a relatively high interest rate. What is the, don't you only, I thought, doesn't Vanguard or Wells Fargo do these loans at $1 million? Or are they saying that at 300 million, you get like extra special types of loans? Hold on. Jesus Christ. No, that's not what I'm looking for. I'm looking for secured loans. I started to bring up stuff from 40 minutes ago. With respect to inflation, you generally need, well, the expansion of the money supply coupled with an economic event that causes a good / supply or good / service supply squeeze. Sure. I thought I saw a secured loan load. Oh, I'm sorry. What do I have load here? I know. The unified estate and gift tax exemption for 20... Oh, okay. This is a very unusual oversight because buy, borrow, die, as it exists in the real world at least, is very much an integrated tax and estate planning strategy. The unified estate and gift tax exemption for 2024 is $13.61 million per taxpayer, $27.22 million per married couple. That means you can give up to $13.6 million without paying. The above example, Peter dies with an asset worth $740 million, assuming he has no other assets or liabilities. He's going to be subject to an estate tax of $298.5 million. Peter's avoided income tax by virtue of the basis adjustment that occurs at death, but he's subject to a substantial estate tax that in theory serves as a backstop to make sure he pays some taxes. The conventional wisdom is that you can avoid income tax or you can avoid estate tax, but you can't do both. The conventional wisdom is wrong. I'll explain why. Hold on. I'm sorry. I got to see this. When you die, does your tax basis step up to asset value? When an asset is inherited rather than sold or gifted, the cost basis typically gets stepped up to their fair market value of the property at the date of the individual's death. But you have to pay. Don't you have to pay for that step up? According to Section 1014 of the Internal Revenue Code, if a person holds property at death, they will receive a new basis equal to the fair market value of the property at the person's date of death. In the case of appreciated assets, the rule allows people to inherit the assets such as stocks or real estate without inheriting the tax burden that's triggered by capital gains. This is known as a step-up in basis. It's in states that recognize community property laws. Married couples stand to benefit greatly. The IRS also grants the inheritor a long-term, out of step-up basis. Okay. All assets have a cost basis, which is more or less its purchase price. When an asset is sold, the difference between the cost basis and the sale price is a capital gain. Capital gains are
subject to taxes. When an asset is inherited rather than sold or gifted, the cost basis typically gets stepped up to the fair market value of the property at the date of the individual's death. From a tax standpoint, it's as if the asset was purchased at the price, okay, and no taxes owed on any of the previous, okay. This is true for the person that inherits it. I'm almost positive that the estate has to pay for that step up in basis. Did I just misread this somewhere, or is this just not true? Typically, the cost basis of an asset equals the purchase price of the asset minus any adjustments. An inherited asset policy for inheritors can adjust the cost basis of the current fair market value capital against accrued. It's recognized but not realized for the beneficiary. Okay, in other words, it's included in the value of the asset but not taxable, so on appreciation. Hence, the executor of the estate, it's consider a hypothetical inheritor named Angela who purchased a home in 1975 for $50K over the 48 years, an increase in $500K. Will she'll may inherited the home and the cost basis was adjusted to the fair market value, $20,000. That's 7 minutes. How much can I step up basis capital asset on death? Wouldn't this be something that varies from state to state? I thought the estate tax is a federal tax. The estate does have to pay for taxes above the exemption. Yeah, I'm thinking that a lot of this this advice is just working for the average person because the average person just never hits the actual estate tax exemption. So it feels like it's a free step up, but it's not free. The $13.61 million estate tax exemption excludes the vast majority of estates having to pay an estate tax, but it doesn't eliminate them. If you're the executor of an estate with a gross value above $13.6 million for adding adjustable taxable gifts, subtracting the amount greater than the exemption, the excess taxable gifts. Okay, hold on. God, that's nice. Okay, I think this is what's happening. That other site is just not mentioning it, though. I'm like 79% sure that I'm correct here. Okay. So I'm like 79% sure that this guy is not correct here. But then he's claiming that he has a job that he either doesn't have, he's lying, or I'm missing something really big that I'm just not, I don't know or I'm not understanding. What a well-advised taxpayer would do is implement an estate freezing technique early on in the buy, borrow, die game. Is tax evasion worth it? No. Tax avoidance means optimizing your tax footprint. Tax evasion implies breaking the law. Or no, it means breaking the law. It's tax evasion. I wonder if anybody in the comments corrects him on this or what they say. 18 days ago. People like me explain the loopholes to the government all the time, usually when the legislation is proposed. Taxonomics. So we're really going to throw the assets into a family limited partnership or family limited liability company. One benefit of doing that is we're going to be able to take valuation discounts when we make our gifts. Discount amounts can range depending on how aggressive the appraiser is and what discounts are available. Variably in this type of plan, you'll see the discounts conglomerate around 35%. He's using a lot of abbreviations. I feel like he knows what he's talking about. Huh. That's Mr. IRS. He runs the IRS. Oh, shit. Exactly. Which part do you disagree with them on? I don't believe that this part is correct. He's got a magical part in here that makes the strategy work, and it's this. When you die, your asset's tax basis is stepped up to where the fair market value of the asset is the day that you die. However, he's saying that that step up in basis comes at no cost. I think that the step up in basis has to be paid for. So he would pay a capital gains appreciation on the difference between 740 million and 50 million. He bought the asset for 50 million, and it now has a fair market value of 740 million. To step that tax basis up, he would have to pay 690 million capital gains tax. Now, but it would actually be 690 million less 13.6 million, which is the estate tax exemption, which covers the vast majority of estates, which is why most people think that this can happen for free, but it doesn't happen when you exceed the threshold of the estate tax exemption, is my understanding. But the basis must be consistent with the estate tax return for person in general. The basis of any property for which the subsection A applies shall not exceed, in the case of property, the final value which has been determined for purposes of tax imposed by Chapter 11. Exception, determination. Yeah, I don't know. Okay. Looks like he explains how to get around that in the second part of the post. I didn't see that. I feel like I read it, but... Oh, hold on. Wait, forget everything I just said. Hold on. Wait. Oh, wait a second. Hold on. Wait, there's a whole second part. Peter buys an asset worth 50 million and transfers it to the PLG 2024 irrevocable trust or irrevocable trust. The trust to eliminate gift tax on the transfer he uses $13.61 million exemption amount and a variety of sophisticated techniques we don't really get into here that might involve preferred freeze partner after 10 years of appreciating at an annual rate of 8%. Of the asset is worth 108 million. Borrow. Peter goes to the bank to get a loan, but now Peter doesn't have the asset to use as collateral because he transferred it to the trust. Not a problem. The trustee of the trust is going to guarantee the loan using the trust asset and as collateral. In return, Peter will pay the trust a guarantee fee, typically around 1%. Peter can transact the trust any prior to Peter's death. He's going to use a loan/line of credit to obtain cash. Then he's going to exercise his power of substitution to swap the highly appreciated asset out of the trust and swap the cash into the trust. So immediately before the loan, Peter might have 0 assets, 0 liabilities. The trust will have an asset worth 780 million and no liabilities. Immediately after the loan, Peter will have perhaps 700 million cash, 90% loan to value, collateralized by the trust asset, and 700 million liabilities. The trust will still have 700. The people will exercise power of substitution. Then Peter dies. Peter's gross estate includes a 700 million asset. His estate receives an indebtedness deduction for the 700 million. Oh, okay. I don't know about this. I don't know enough about structures of trust or anything, so I couldn't comment on any of this at all. This might possibly be true, but I couldn't say. If it is, it's probably not good though. But I also don't understand it, so okay. Back to this.
Absolutely sound answer that IRI gave that, first of all, we were cleaning up a mess. We were in the middle of a COVID pandemic, and it was a crisis. The first thing that the Biden administration did was pass a Recovery Act. You could say,
can you explain why it is a good thing for someone to step the basis up to the fair market value after death? Because you don't want a new inheritor to be like subject to a whole bunch of tax liability. That feels really shitty. Imagine I die and I leave Nathan $1 million and I bought it for $1,000, $1 million asset, and I bought it for $1,000. Well, when Nathan inherits that, well, there's one of two things that has to happen. Either one, he has to immediately pay taxes on $999,000 of appreciation because that capital gain appreciation didn't happen, or he would inherit $1 million asset with a $1,000 tax basis, which is weird because now he's carrying a whole bunch of capital gains overhead that he doesn't have any, like, it's just a lot to keep track of, maybe? I don't know, actually, why you don't inherit the lower basis. Maybe it's just complicated paperwork. It'd be weird. A bunch of people would be carrying around assets with, like, a tax basis from 200 years ago. Maybe it would just be a way to, it's just way too much lock-in, I guess. maybe it's a lock-in effect too, right? Do you really want somebody to inherit something that if they were to sell it, they'd immediately lose 30% of it to pay capital gains? Like it would probably do bad things to the supply of investments and money and capital and everything. That'd be my guess. I don't know. Honey.
Say it's inflationary, but you look at economic analysis after the fact, they don't attribute it, the inflationary effect of that policy or other policies to those specific pieces of legislation. In fact, it's a global inflation crisis that is facing the entire world. And as IRI or Hutch, I think, pointed out, America, relatively speaking, has recovered better than the other G7 countries, better than the other advanced economies. We got a shit ton of legislation passed that specifically relates to the economy, whether that's the Inflation Reduction Act, the Infrastructure Act, which will absolutely benefit the economy in the future, and other pieces of legislation. I'm willing to fight and defend this administration for what it stood for and what it got done. You point to the fact that there are bad polls. Trump had bad polls in his term. If we just look to polls to determine, or the general trend of the economy, and this kind of correlation equals causation analysis, I mean, that would be a great way to defend like the policies of George Bush right before the Great Recession, right? You have to look more than just how the economy generally is doing or what people think about it generally.
Real purpose, so rich kids can inherit more. I feel like inheriting something at a lower basis would probably be more beneficial for a rich person than for a poor person. So if anything, it probably helps. My guess is it would help poor people more, is to inherit it at the actual basis rather than to have to carry forward some weird wonky. But I mean, anything can be used or abused. You have more options when you're wealthy you have more options when you're wealthy, but I don't know if I would say that necessarily favors the rich.
And look to the policies themselves and what the likely effects of them.
Yeah, I think that's going to be
election. As to the lying point about
is there any more time we can give you, Pisco?
The last point I'll make.
Wanted to respond.
No thinking person thinks that Kamala Harris was in charge of the administration for the past 3 or 4 years. That's pure fantasy. If you read any of the reports of the insiders of who's operating things behind the scenes or whether Joe Biden was in charge of the first 4 years, no one is saying that Kamala Harris is running the show.
If I may, real quick, just to respond to that point.
Do you care if they take from you? It was you were next. It was your
I mean, Rob, if it's quick, I want to get in here, Rob. But
Harris herself has said of many of these issues, she was the last person in the room, and my statement is Harris.
What do you want?